Yesterday, as a collective, we did a healing for the collective level of the physiology, basically. And at the collective level of the physiology, we looked in detail at the structure. And when I say structure, I mean we were looking at the web of life, which is present at this collective level. Really, the web of life kind of moves through the collective, from the collective up through the astral level of the physiology. That whole area has all these little beams and threads of consciousness. But in there, we were looking at particularly the nodes that are specifically oriented, or you could say the energy signature at those particular nodes is specific for the expansion of wealth. And of course, when we're looking at creation of wealth or expansion of affluence, we're also looking at the manifesting process, obviously. Okay, so in so doing, what happened was an awakening to those nodes, those particular nodes in each individual collective physiology, but also because we have this big, rich group. I mean, the webinars keep getting bigger, and at this moment, I would like to give a shout out to those people who've been with me for a long time. I have some people in this webinar who've been on every webinar I have ever offered. That's since 2014. So that's a really, really long time. Anyway, it's a long time to be taking in this information. Because of that, I want to organize today's talk in such a way that we don't simply double over the work that we've done in past webinars, because in past webinars for manifestation, we've talked about, clearing vows of poverty and clearing poverty consciousness and so forth. But I also don't want to miss the new people who haven't been in on those particular aspects of the healing process to miss out either. Therefore, those of you who haven't been in on the previous manifestation webinars, thank you, will get that as we're going along, even though I may not bring it up specifically as a point. And if you want to review that work, you can always go back and watch some of my earlier manifestation webinars. Okay, so back to the review. So this aspect of creation got really enlivened, and one of my favorite moments was when this sort of deep, intimate relationship was sort of, I would say it was birthed. This relationship was birthed in terms of understanding this structure of creation in terms of oneself. Because two things happened. First of all, when it integrated into the field of consciousness of everyone watching the webinar, everyone participating. And as it integrated, it simply becomes part of one's own nature. At the same time, that aspect of creation, which I used, maybe I will pop this picture up here for you guys. I used a picture of an earth location that has the laws of nature for manifesting wealth embedded within its structure. Here we go. Las Vegas manifesting wealth. All over the world, we go to try our luck and see how well aligned our consciousness is with that process, whether it's going to happen effortlessly or not. Anyway, these areas of creation that have gone unrecognized and unappreciated rose with such great pleasure and joy from the interface of the awareness and consciousness of the group with the quality of consciousness contained within these different areas. This was one of them. That stabilization and integration of the relationship of this part of the web of creation with the mother of creation also occurred. And that was the foundation for really cementing the relationship for the individual and for the cosmos. That cementing was key. And it brings me to some new information. I'm going to close that for now, I guess. I guess we can look at the beautiful rocks for a while. So one of the gentlemen who was on the course yesterday, sent me a copy of Maharishi's Principles of Business and Industry with the old and new principles. That was another thing we covered, were kind of like old and new principles. And boy, Maharishi says it best. You know, he really has a beautiful way of outlining, and the same, you know, mostly the same points. But I think his points were more fleshed out and more perfect even than mine. So the reason I have this in front of me today is because I realize that there are places in these points from Maharishi where energy healing can be a support and enhancement of the process. You know, the beauty of his work is that he was, in a very simple way, working to get the experience of transcending out to everybody, just so that everybody has that ability to find that source of creation within themselves and then function from that level. And it was a huge, very innovative, very amazing, huge project that he undertook. In his old and new principles, though, the ones that I'd like to look at today, by the way, I think there's a place, the gentleman who gave this to me, I think he's here today. If you want to give a reference to it so other people can go look it up, we could do that. Anyway, one of the points is that the old principle is that performance in the old style of thinking of how to create wealth utilized only the available level of creativity. And in the new principles that are guided by awakened consciousness, by the, as he puts it, the age of enlightenment, skilled performance, enlivening unbounded awareness at every stroke progressively unfolds and utilizes maximum creativity. You can see that's like a little compact statement there. And what we are doing in energy work is we're intentionally going in and looking at the mechanics of how that happens, how this every stroke progressively unfolds and utilizes maximum creativity. And we're looking at that in detail and what needs to be adjusted internally. And not to sound offensive to anyone who's been meditating a long time, because I've been meditating a long time. I have a lot of respect for people in that boat. But to be honest, we have people who have been meditating for decades and are still struggling financially with their health in various other areas. It's not to say that they've made a mistake. It's just to say that something else needs to be addressed. That's all. It's a chance to look more deeply. That's all. So that's what we're doing. We're just looking more deeply. One of the principles that Maharishi never talked about was conscience. At least I don't remember him ever talking about conscience. Conscience. A person's conscience is that aspect of self. I was looking at it in detail, and it's not so much a node or a structure. It's more like a channel of communication. I see conscience as a channel of communication between individual awareness and one's God presence, one's divine. The God presence is itself a connection between individuality and universality. And this is a principle I haven't mentioned for a really long time, but we've got kind of like the big being of all creation, the mother of creation, who's present here and sort of embracing our group. And as that's happening, organization is taking place and orderliness is coming into the group consciousness of our webinar. And as that happens, what I'm seeing is that the inner point of our group consciousness, and the manifestation of an aspect of that divine level of intelligence, which is responsible for knowledge, truth, all the arts, all the, this aspect of mother, this aspect, wisdom. So that's sitting in the core and humming that frequency. And we're talking about conscience. So we have that big, big, big wholeness of creation. And then to interface with our individual antennas is the holding of that energy, that pure essential energy, which is the wholeness of creation. Only each of us embodies a certain percentage of it, a certain amount of it at any given time. And one of the things we do in our webinars is we work on our flexibility, adaptability, and stability, right? So that we can sometimes, if we need to embrace more, we can embrace more. And sometimes if we need to simplify it down, we can simplify it down. Like a musical instrument, we need to be able to have that flexibility to use to interface our conscious awareness with the field in such a way as to have intentional effect on the bit that we hold. And as we do that, the bit that we hold evolves. And as it evolves, that means the big one evolves. The big being of all creation evolves. It's just being interacting with itself. Conscience. Conscience connects the conscious mind with one's own field of God presence energy. Conscience. And what a question had come in, and this is why I'm talking about conscience. We'll get back to the old and new principles. It's kind of a long question, but I highlighted the spots that I thought were important. So without going into full-blown detail here, this person says that they used to be able to save money, but now they just blow it in addictive spending behaviors. So there's a shopping addiction there. And then they said they can't access any part of their consciousness. Down in this fifth paragraph, they say, I cannot access the inner tribe. I cannot access deeper levels of her being. In this state, how can I work on manifesting a way forward? That is such a good question, right? And then the last part of the question is, they're thinking back to some of the spiritual teachers, other spiritual teachers that they've listened to, who say that everything is preordained and predestined, and that our futures are determined, and we should sit back and just enjoy the ride because there isn't much choice, actually. Obviously, this person is feeling that if they were fully realized, they would be able to just sit back and enjoy the ride no matter what comes. But that they can't do that because they're not fully realized and they have no access to consciousness. Conscience. The connector is conscience. So for the person who wrote this letter, and for anybody else who's dealing with any kind of addictive behaviors or connections, personal relationships with substances or materials which are not supportive of the evolutionary process. Addictions are being cleared from the upper chakras. They're also being cleared from the cerebellum, which is an organ in the back of the head, where back of the brain, near the brainstem, which is responsible for a lot of the filtering processes that take place in the mind. We need to unblock some of the filters that stop an individual from having the experience of their own deeper awareness, their own deeper field of being, and also create filters between those individual thinking and those habits of going for some kind of superficial, short-term, satisfying experience, the sacrifice of the long-term, the sacrifice of the deepest good for the self. And for some people who have relationships with food, some of that attachment is in the stomach, so that's also clearing, and the third chakra, and the auric field of the third chakra, that's also clearing. Great. Also the pancreas, also the liver, all those organs of digestion. Also in the throat, we did a big healing for the throat yesterday, but that's another spot where attachments get stuck in the physiology. And the person feels like, So attachments and connections and addictions and pain bodies are clearing. As we're doing that, we're also clearing that same package from the mental body and the emotional body with regards to poverty. Some people have connections and attachments to poverty. It's considered quite, what's the word, like kind of holy. You know, you think of the holy monks who are poor, clearing any vows for people there, any past life connections to feeling spiritually superior to those around because of maintaining poverty, chastity, obedience, all those qualities. We're going to get some more color in here. There's some color. Happy spring, everybody. As that movement takes place in the physiology, what I'm experiencing is bliss is pouring in. So it means that the antidote to those particular imbalances is joy and happiness. And we did a long work yesterday with the ability to open up the capacity, at least the inner capacity, to really revel in one's own joy and happiness. For those who have circulatory problems, this affects the circulatory system because the flow of blood is the flow of joy. So it's support for the circulatory system and also support for the nervous system. The structure, all the veins and arteries that run through the body, they have a very similar construct. The kind of web that they make inside the body is not dissimilar from the web made by the nervous system. It's not dissimilar, especially when you get out to the finer areas of the tips of the fingers. So some of the blockages there, I'm seeing particularly in the nervous system, early childhood experiences around like age 2 or 3, when the individual is becoming socialized, hopefully becoming socialized by their parents, where sometimes the interaction between parents and children gave rise to a feeling that it's not all right to be happy. It's not okay to revel in joy. And of course, it's always good to have some restraint as an adult. It's always good to have some restraint, but it doesn't mean that one is necessarily cut off entirely from bliss, from one's bliss and happiness. And that's what I'm seeing for the lady with the question, is that those early childhood experiences of being disciplined out of being rambunctious, clearing grief all up here in the chest area. Feels like a opportunity lost. And that experience or that feeling of opportunity lost is intimately connected to the experiences which cemented in the belief in poverty consciousness. Oh, I had an opportunity for wealth and I missed it. I didn't recognize it. I didn't go for it. Well, it just shows that I don't deserve it. No, no, no. For every opportunity, there are 1,000 more right behind it. There are infinite more right behind it. We're opening that door. That's the field of all possibilities. Didn't he say that? All possibilities unfolds and utilizes Somewhere in here he talks about all possibilities. Anyway, it wasn't that point. Maharishi's point's very beautiful. So the principle here, the overriding principle that we talked about yesterday was creativity. So the conscience is the thing that curbs behavior, basically. If you listen to your conscience, it's the one that says, oh, don't go over there, go over here. You'll have better luck. So it tends to curb a little bit the range of the big soup of, oh, well, infinite universes stretching out before me. So it kind of curbs it down. It starts to define it down so that one gets into a path that's going to be maximally successful. At the same time, infinity resides at every point. So even if we say, okay, I'm not going to do this whole range of activities which are not aligned with my highest good or my full potential, I'm going to stick with this other range over here. Even within that range, there's infinite possibilities. Infinite. So even if a person feels like they have no access to the source of creation, they have no access to the subtle levels of their consciousness, it does not mean that they cannot be successful. It's still infinite possibilities. It just means that the process of accessing that level of intelligence and creativity is slowed down so that it can be appreciated to such a fine and complete and thorough degree that the act of watching the unfoldment of that relationship is so rich, it's so complete, that it literally changes creation. It goes back to the heart of the mother of creation, and it changes, it evolves, it causes being of all creation, the birther of all the universes itself, to evolve. That's what it means. It's big. It means you've bitten off a big chunk. That's what it means. Sometimes we bite off such big chunks, right, that it feels a little overwhelming. The second part of this question about how other spiritual teachers say that everything is determined and that we just should sit back and enjoy life. It's important not to get caught in nihilism. Nihilism is that idea that, well, everything just is, and so there's nothing, we don't do anything. The truth is that both everything just is and we do. And our doing and our caring and the meaning that we give to everything in creation enhances and supports the overall evolution of the entire creative process. So to just give up and say, well, I'm not going to try because it doesn't really mean anything anyway, the universe is going to go on without me, is actually not honoring one's role, one's preciousness, one's adorableness, one's power in this level of creation. You are so powerful. Now, yesterday what happened was this deep, loving, intense relationship was forged at the collective level of the physiology with this ancient, eternal wisdom connected to and associated with the nature of wealth and affluence and abundance, financial freedom. And this was stabilized because that level of self received its own healing and forged its own deeper, more profound relationship with the mother of creation. So it was a whole, complete unfoldment of an intimacy with this aspect of oneself that has not been like that before. Our group, our powerful group, did that. You did that. That was amazing. That was amazing. But then it came up through the denser levels of the physiology, up to the causal body, up to the astral body. The causal body is where the structures of consciousness take that relationship and they say, how do I best honor this relationship? And for each of us, it's going to be a little bit different. But that's where the individual work comes in right now. We're doing for everybody is clarifying with simplicity and discrimination, clarifying how does each individual honor this relationship to the best of its full potential, to the best of their ability. And what I'm seeing for a lot of people, it's very tender, is the construction of capabilities, or I would say the construction of areas like the reconstruction, okay, the reconstruction of areas of the causal body so that one is able to interact tenderly in a way that hasn't been previously possible. Ooh, I want that. A level of sensitivity, a level of discretion, which was not previously possible. Clearing illusion from the causal level of the physiology, that functioning in this way is girly. The girls do that. Guys, you know, they're kind of tough. They just get out there and punch somebody. Oh, we're not getting along well. I was saying to my son something, I can't remember what it was. And he's saying, well, the way I solve that problem is I just punch somebody. I don't think he's ever punched anybody, but you know, it's a way of looking at things. It's one way of looking at things. And the other way of looking at things is tenderly, tenderly, very, I'm looking at it so I see it really clearly, but I want to describe it to you guys. It has to do with tenderness from a systemic perspective. So this means a tenderness that's like a blanket. Like a blanket. Oh, I was looking at too bad I don't have a picture of it to show you. I was looking at a place in Oregon yesterday where there is many miles. There is one of the oldest living organisms. I think the man said it was the oldest living organism on Earth. It was something like several million years old. It's a fungus. It's a mushroom that's one cell thick, and it stretches over an entire area in Oregon somewhere. And it's like the way this particular one is structured, it's like the web of life. It looks like the web of life. It's like this structure made of all these little tiny little threads, one cell thick little threads that form little strings that connect together at little one-celled nodes and so forth. And it stretches for like miles. It's an amazing thing. It's a living force on the body of our earth. There's such amazing beings everywhere, right? But I bring that up because it's like this. It's like this tenderness is so fine, and yet it has this capacity to stretch out so big, so big. And what the man in the lecture about mushrooms said was that they took piles of industrial waste like petroleum products and oil and nasty chemicals and stuff, and they had several of them as an experiment, and on one of them they grew mushrooms, but on the other ones they did things like they put enzymes on them, and they just left one of them as it was. And anyway, I can send you the link if you're interested. But on the mushroom pile, by the time they were done, it was a living ecosystem. And all the rest of them were smelly, oily piles of rotten yuck. And the pile that had the mushrooms growing on it turned into an ecosystem. How beautiful is that? Not to say that I'm either advocating for or against. I'm just saying that this is research. This is scientific research. And that when we put this structure, this communication structure of these fine, fine threads of consciousness that can so tender that they can reside at all different levels of density of the physiology, then what we do is we restructure those areas that are like dark, gooey, icky masses of toxin anywhere in the system, even if it's just a big, sticky mass of discordant feelings left over from being 2 years old and being happy and being punished and sent to the room because you were being too noisy or something like that, and then going to the room and thinking, if I'm happy, I'm not loved. Being happy isn't okay. It gets me in trouble. It's not. I'm learning from my parents that if I'm too exuberant and happy, that therefore I am not acting appropriately. And so happiness isn't, the little tiny child, 2-year-old, 3-year-old mind says, happiness isn't appropriate. I shouldn't feel happy. Maybe I don't deserve to feel happy. The wealth brings bliss, you know. It brings comfort and freedom. It brings the capacity to manage one's affairs in a more orderly and progressive way. If you don't have anything, you have to go out and chop wood, you know, and beg for your food. It takes time, it takes all day. Who has time then to be creative or something, you know? So, or work at a factory job. It's very tiring. I'm feeling a lot of heat. It's almost like heat is eliminating, is being released from the system, from the face. The face is where we meet the public. It's also related to the astral body. The astral body is so interesting. The astral body relates to the immune system, right? Because it protects, but it also relates to the face because it is the point energetically in the system of density to subtlety where we meet the public, where we meet the environment, where what we think of as our individual energy field, our individual self structure, there's a point right there between the emotional and the astral where it goes from a finite structure to an infinite structure. So that's where what we think of as the antenna of the universe connects to the rest of the universe, basically. And it's very interesting. I'm just seeing this. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, beautiful, my beautiful ones. You're so wonderful that I didn't see this till this very moment. But another point about that, which is interesting to me, is that the face is where we show the most detailed nuance of emotion, right? The eyes and the smile and all that. And right there is the emotional body. So the astral body has a kind of a correlation with the face itself, and then the emotions sit upon the face, or they you know, are expressed through that face. It's very interesting. The astral body. So at the level of that astral body, that face, before the emotions come, in its stillness, I'm enjoying being with you too much. I can't do it. I can't do a completely still face. There's always a little bit of a smile. I'm looking at the relationship right now between the astral body and the heart, because we know that the heart chakra area is also one of the main areas that then what we feel in the heart comes up and is expressed on the face. And the reason we're looking at this is it's partly for the sake of Our Lady here, who's having trouble connecting to her finer levels of her consciousness. We're kind of working from the inside up for her. So she's trying to reach those levels from the outside in, and we're kind of coming to meet her from the inside up. But at the same time, we're also integrating this relationship. This was very, very key. It was very important what came up yesterday when this birth of this very powerful inner relationship with one's own wealth, matrix, you can call it, wealth structure. The wealth matrix on the face, and a love matrix on the face also. Oh, that's interesting. I'm just looking at it, guys. I'm looking at that. The face of love and the face of wealth. As a tenderness. There's a new level of meaning for the heart chakra here. A new level of purification for the heart chakra. And what's basically happening with that early childhood healing that took place was unblocking some of the beliefs that were held at the mental level of the body that look upon the acquisition of wealth or the possession of great wealth as having problems and flaws associated with it. And of course, any boon can have its good side and its bad side, but that's all dependent on conscience. It all comes back to conscience right there, right? Because if you have great wealth, but you have a conscience, then the way you obtain the wealth and the way you distribute the wealth will be done in such a way as to conform to Maharishi's principles here, that it's for the sake of the good of all of life. It's not just a selfish act. Or any other boon, wealth or intelligence or beauty or social connections or any of those. Conscience is a key. And for this sweet lady who wrote this question, I just brought out her highlighted points, but some of her other points are that she feels very dull inside. She feels cut off from society and yet oppressed by society, and she feels as if she's just barely living from one day to the next. And that dullness is sitting in the junction between conscious mind and conscience. Because when the conscience wakes up, it is the channel that keeps us intimately connected and working in a working relationship, in a flexible, mobile, progressive, evolving relationship with our own divine self. That nihilistic view of creation also, and I bring this up again because it's really something that's going on at the collective level of consciousness right now in a very big way. And this I only say confidently because of the information brought to me by my adult children. God bless my adult children. They keep me, there's so much information out on the internet that I alone, with all the work that I'm doing, cannot go out there and just read tons of material and be totally connected with everything. So God bless them. They do a lot of the research for me. And it's a very big thing right now, is the connection between, non-dualism has become a very sort of major, has been for quite some time now, years, has been a kind of major approach towards spirituality for people. And nihilism is a form of non-dualism. But one of the things that nihilism does is it basically gives permission to people to just disregard their conscience, because it just says, well, everything just is, and it doesn't matter what you do. What you do is meaningless. Life at the surface of, the surface of life is meaningless. And, if I thought it was totally meaningless, I probably wouldn't have put on earrings or something, right? But I realize that there is a value. There's a value at every level. And that's what we're doing in today's webinar, is we're bringing up this intimate and tender, very tender, this deep, tender connection that was just made in the causal level. The physiology was made in order to enhance our own experience of this relationship, which is already established and is now ready to blossom forth into the superficial level of life and become a concrete, a solid, a manifested expression of human experience, of your experience, of my experience, of our experience. There is, and this was a point that came up yesterday, but I feel like I brought it up more abstractly, there is enough wealth on this earth, literally for everybody. Because basically wealth is a manifested representation of energy and time. It's also a representation of love, of course. Love is the currency. Love is the real currency. But love translates into time and energy. When you love someone, you give them your time and your energy. You know, you give them, you spend time with them, you do things for them like that. So, I love you. Anyway, the point is that there is, every one of us is an infinite fountainhead of love and time and energy. The fact that we live in our human bodies and we're having a human experience, it means that we have time and energy right now. So that part of the wealth process is done. It's taken care of. It's stabilized. It's there for you. The next step is, how do we get it? And how do we get it past that? The love and the time and energy resides at that more infinite, the subtle levels of the being. And how do we work it up into the dense levels of being so it literally translates into whatever wealth means to you? So we're at the junction. We're right there at the junction point. And right there at the junction point in our collective is where this mother goddess energy's been sitting since the beginning of this session. This Saraswati energy is right there. Of course, the mother goddess in at least Hindu religion has these three values. There's the Saraswati, she's the knowledge and wisdom, and then there's Lakshmi, who is the fountainhead of wealth, and then there's Durga, which is that fierce, get out there and get it done sort of quality. And so all three of those values conjoined, sitting right in that junction, right there for our group. So Ma, it's like the group is embraced by the mother of creation, and it's happening. She doesn't have to do that. She doesn't have to. But the work that we're doing has been so yummy, because putting our attention, forging our relationship with this ancient form of knowingness of wealth production has enhanced her relationship with it as well. I'm literally seeing births of cosmic structures which are in themselves valuable. I'm seeing her just like in bliss, like the birthing process, you know, creating so much wealth in every corner of creation. Oh, there we go. A channel just opened. That was good. This particular channel has to do with knowledge. It's a knowledge channel, because in a sense, that's the commodity that we're working in most directly at this time in history. Knowledge, information is wealth. Just ask Google. Okay. So moving that up, I'm just asking Ma, I'm actually self-referring back to ask the mother of creation, who's sitting in this gap here and sitting at either end of the structure of our individualities. How do we stabilize and integrate this beautiful, intimate, loving, luscious, like life-enhancing relationship into the denser levels of self? Conscience is part of it. So simplicity. We're bringing the celestial body, just like yesterday, is vibrating in the quality of simplicity and orderliness. To bring this relationship into the denser level of the physiology without causing strain. And I say that because when I was looking, the relationship was, for me too, you know, yesterday, all night, I was revisiting this relationship and saying, what is this? And, you know, what do I need to do? What do we need to do to work with this relationship more effectively, to honor it. And what I got was that the relationship with this aspect of creation is one which asks us as individuals to stretch beyond our, to move into new territory, to courageously expand what we're able to do from the range of happy schmappy all the time, to be able to get into some of the areas that may have challenges connected to and associated with them, and then to bring to life and integrate, stabilize the glory of divine union and our divine being in those more challenging areas. And as we do this, we're expanding. Autonomous. Okay, now look, guys, if you ask questions on the chat, it automatically goes to everybody. If you ask questions from your question and answer box, then it's anonymous. Just saying, that's how to be anonymous. Or send me an email, that works too. Does conscience mean the tender, spontaneous ability to know and do what's right and most evolutionary? Yes. I always think of conscience as having that element of doing what is right. Yes. So brilliant. I'm so grateful to have people who are ultra brilliant in on this webinar. But yes, conscience is the channel that keeps us connected to the level of our inner intelligence that really knows right from wrong, that really knows where the soul is headed to reach its full potential. There's a part of you that literally knows at any given moment what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, and what's the best way to approach a given challenge. There's a part that knows that. But conscience is the bit that connects that knowingness, that deep inner unbounded, connected to the wholeness of creation knowingness, to the conscious mind, which is grappling with moral dilemmas and a world that can be confusing at times, and inputs from other people that might be pushing you one way or another. Everybody's got their piece of advice, right? I remember the first time I got pregnant, I discovered that at least here in the West, in the Western world, girls aren't really taught that much about the process of pregnancy and so forth. You know, you hear of morning sickness. So you think it happens in the morning. Oh, no, it happens all day long and all night long. Not just why they call it morning sickness, we'll never really know. No, no, I mean, there was so much, you know, and everybody had an opinion of how that child should be born. And in the end, it was a good discovery to know that it was my show, and it had to happen within the constraints of my own comfort. And so the conscious mind is constantly being bombarded with diametrically opposed pieces of information. And this is actually what I'm talking about when I'm talking about expanding into those areas that aren't just happy schmappy. That what we do is the areas where paradoxes are found are the areas where greater potential for divinity to embody is possible. And ultimately, that's what we're doing. We are here in human bodies on this earth for the purpose of supporting the divinity, the mother of the multiverse, to embody the relative field of creation, to embody even the densest materials and fabrics. We have just this very interesting balance of elements right here on earth. So much percentage earth, so much percentage water, so much fire, so much air, so much space. And it's different on earth than it is in the sun or on Jupiter or anywhere else or any of the other planets in creation. We have this certain just lovely, perfect mix that we're dealing with. And on Earth, what we're doing as souls is we're exploring how does the divinity of creation embody this particular mix of elements. How does that work? And how can it happen to such a degree as to manifest? When you hit that golden moment, you know you've hit it, right? To manifest that feeling of, okay, man, I'm in the zone. I got this one, right? In the zone. There's even a word for it here in English, in the zone. So when you hit the zone, then you know you've got it. And at that point, you're playing by cosmic rules, not by individual rules. And that brings us back to these beautiful points again, these old and new rules. Action from the level of silent awareness stirs the infinite level of creativity. The old principle was action from the action level, action from the active level of awareness draws upon limited creativity. But action from the level of silent awareness stirs infinite level of creativity. Another one is that routine work cramped the expression of creative intelligence, causing stress, frustration, and discontent. And that is exactly what my lady with the long question is experiencing. Whereas the rigidity caused by routine work is neutralized by creating infinity, unbounded awareness, twice daily through TM, it says here. But we know that this is where we hit one of those paradoxes, right? Because we know people who twice daily through TM have been doing it and yet are still struggling with challenges and problems and poverty consciousness and ill health and etc. I'm not discounting. I still honor what he said. He was right and he was brilliant and he said it better than I could possibly ever say it ever, and was doing more with his creativity than I would say anybody that I've ever known in the history of humanity. But I'm here meeting with people in my community who are struggling with stuff. And so the question is, how do we take the energy work that we've got in this webinar and get into those little spots that somehow manage to escape? They manage to escape in spite of the transcending. How do we do this? This is important. We need this. I have friends who died because they were following this other to the letter and it still didn't work for them. I'm sorry. But you can't argue with death. I'm sorry. I love you. I love you. So anyway, the point is that this ability to not be, for the physiology not to be dragged down by the routine work, and for the, particularly for this lady who's very sensitive. Some people, you know, how many people are extra sensitive? There's even a saying called people who are highly sensitive. I think that's a term that's used now, that some people are very highly sensitive. So this very intelligent lady who asked this question is a very highly intelligent and highly sensitive soul. So when she's in a crowded bus full of people, it's more overwhelming to her senses than it is to the average person who maybe can learn to kind of dull themselves out a little bit when they're on a crowded bus or whatever, a crowded train in her case. So there are these experiences which naturally create stress in the system. The routine work experiences, or being overwhelmed by too much sensory input. And this comes down to the structure of the cerebellum, because the cerebellum is that organ which is responsible for filtering out information which is not useful and allowing in information which is useful to the brain. It's almost like a little mini brain all in itself. I mean, there are so many this is what Fred Travis taught us in the brain physiology class. There's so many neural connections in the cerebellum that there are as many in the cerebellum as there are in the whole brain. That's a lot. Trillions. So it's like a little mini brain. And it's our little filter. that lets us discriminate what's going to come in from the whole universe and what's not. And right there in that structure, clearing. Thank you, questions and answers. Clearing. Pain bodies. Attachments to discord. Lack of self-love. A love matrix is going into the cerebellum. Gosh, thank you. Thank you, anonymous viewer. Yeah, I was feeling bad. Like, you know, I so honor Maharishi's knowledge. I didn't want to say anything that was, you know, and this is just a little piece. These points right here, I mean, he said lots of things, right? This is just like one little sentence. Maharishi was all about action. He sure was. I think a lot of people have misunderstood or missed the essence of what he says about rest and activity. Right. Activity is essential to stabilize pure consciousness and is also the way we utilize the power of our consciousness and activity. Oh man, that was so beautifully said. I have to read it again. Maharishi was all about action, exclamation point. I think a lot of people have misunderstood or missed the essence of what he said. What Maharishi says about rest and activity is that action or activity is essential to stabilize pure consciousness and is also the way we utilize the power of our consciousness in activity. God, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, you. I see your work as an opportunity to take some great action as another person. Or maybe the same one. Absolutely. And what we're doing in energy work is we're starting to, in a sense, some of us are coming at it from the outside in and some from the inside out. But what we're doing is we're starting to get a handle on performing subtle actions more in the field of activity. And that's what I was coming to also with this point about routine work that causes stress in the system or being overwhelmed in the system, is that our bodies actually have, and here we're looking at the causal level of the physiology, for those of you who want the map. The causal level of the physiology has the capability of producing, with the support, foundational support system, so this is happening for everybody in this healing session right now, to produce subtle materials which are understood by the cells of the body. They're understood at a cellular level of the physiology. And they allow the cells to stay in their comfort zone. They allow the same person. Yeah, okay. They allow the cells to feel blissful, to feel loved, to purify more efficiently. This is not something that one can do. I mean, yes, on a gross level, I suppose we could say, oh, I'm going to do a liver cleanse, or I'm going to take this herb, which is supposed to be a cellular nutritional supplement or something like that. I mean, you can do that. But the fact is that consciousness is what really interfaces with the physiology to actually cleanse the liver or to actually help the cells metabolize more efficiently. The herbs or the medicines are the permission slips that activate the consciousness. So what we're doing in energy work is we're bypassing the permission slips and getting right to work, consciousness on consciousness. It's important. So for routine work, for fatigue and stress that comes from doing difficult work, and I believe my children told me that Maharishi's description of stress is intense activity hurriedly done. I think I might have mentioned that in a previous webinar, but it's true that if you're doing really, really intense work, but you've got all the time in the world, you can slow down and you can take it one bite at a time, and you can do it without getting too stressed out. And if you have work that's pretty simple, like simple work, and you're kind of in a rush doing it, but you can do it because it's not too difficult, doesn't require too much brain power, then that's also doable. But when you put those two together, when you put the intensity and the rush job together, then it can really be hard on the system. So there's a state in the system, being in the zone. Remember being in the zone? There's that state of being in the zone where it suddenly becomes possible to do intense work even under time pressure. And that's why a lot of times athletes talk about that, you know, when they get out there, you know, they're going to do the gymnastics in front of the whole world at the World Olympics, man, that's pressure for you right there. Ooh. And you have to do it, and you have to do your routine within a certain time frame and so forth. And it's crazy. I mean, we watch these people and we think, how do they do that? You know, that's what I think anyway. My God, she did the splits all the way up to her head. You know, it's like, how did she do that? But at that point, the individual does not experience themselves as an individual doing the action. They experience doing the action, and the individuality is the vehicle. And so there's a state in the physiology when that happens. There's a condition, and it's connected to, this is where we're starting to work this relationship up into the denser levels of the physiology. It's connected to particular neuropeptides and hormones and balance of enzymes in the body, and certainly balance of the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and space also, at a kind of subtler, the ton mantras, the subtle senses. The subtle senses. That condition is itself understood as both a living form of intelligence, and it's experienced as a living form of intelligence at the collective level of the body, and it's experienced as a light medicine, as a medicine that we produce, as a form of consciousness that we produce at the causal level of the physiology. And so from these two levels of the physiology, a loop is being made of energy that loops up to the etheric and physical levels of the body and is communicating. And this is where I love this. I love when these loops occur, these self-referral loops within the field of the physiology, that they literally refine each of our own capacity to self-communicate effectively, to self-communicate with that tenderness. That's why we had to do the tenderness earlier, remember? The tenderness is required to make this self-referral communication effective. It's this just such non-judgmental, non-expectation, absolutely sensitively understanding and appreciating oneself quality, which is in that loop, that helps the communication cement. Because this loop that allows the individual to be in the zone, like all the time. This would be, we could probably call being in the zone all the time as a symptom of divine embodiment. And that has a natural reality in the body, etherically and physically. And what's happening is a restructuring of the physicality of the body down, and I'm looking how deep, I'm under the microscope here, we're looking down at the cellular, subcellular, molecular. That means ancestors are connected into this healing, atomic, subatomic 1, subatomic 2. Okay, so all the way in. It wants to go all the way in, all the way down to the quantum level of the physiology. That loop is speaking. It's a self-speech taking place that's communicating, this is my condition, this is my reality. When I'm in the zone, this is how I feel, and this is how I have the capability of feeling even when I'm engaged in routine work, even when I'm feeling overwhelmed by input from my environment. This is the way in which the body is able at a cellular level to release toxins, to release unwanted material, to release I'm seeing like little threads. Boy, this is for the lady with the long question here. These little threads of energy structure which are prevalent in the environment when the collective is, the overall collective is functioning at a lower level of energy frequency than you are. And this is something, I see how this, I'm asking myself, how does this tie into wealth? What I'm seeing is that one of the things that happens when we create wealth or affluence is that we rise above the mean. You know, if we have society and you've got all the way from the very, very poor to the very, very wealthy and everybody in between, and we're somewhere in the in-between, and how do we rise up out of that in-between state? We got stuck in the in-between state because at this very deep level, and it doesn't look like it's physical so much, but it does look like it's down at the subatomic 1, subatomic 2 levels of the physiology. There are these little threads that bind us in that web of life communication structure to the whole collective, and the collective is as a wholeness is holding this set. We could call it, with our math, you know, the set of all incomes, the set of all incomes on earth. And it's, the set is here and it's got its structure. And as far as creating wealth, it's the same thing. There's kind of like a set of rules that we have to follow in order to create wealth or obtain wealth with integrity, morally, correctly, in a way that's supportive of ourselves and others. These little threads are binding down at that level, and they look to me like threads of light. So they don't look like really insidious or awful or somehow full of negativity or anything like that, but our consciousness, this is the download coming in for everyone. We have the ability to transcend the binding influence of those threads. We have the ability to shake loose of them, like shaking loose of shackles, and to function outside the constraints that those threads put upon our physiology at the etheric and physical level of the physiology. What I'm seeing, and I'm working fast here, guys, because we're running out of minutes and it's getting too exciting, is that this is causing a restructuring of the elements in the physiology, the earth, water, fire, air, and space. And what it's doing is it's harnessing the potential of the air and space qualities. And for more talk about the relationship between air and wealth, look at yesterday's video, just to say, but it's increasing a little bit the qualities of air and space. It's creating a balance. What we've been looking at on Earth right now is way more than 50% Earth value in the body, and also a lot of water value. We sort of build from the denser level when we're talking about our physiologies. And what it's doing is, I'm seeing, it's like an overlay like that, where there's more balance, and there's particularly more balance in these two areas, so that they're starting to create more symmetry. I'm seeing more symmetry in the physiology at the level of the elements. That's what that healing did. It's going to involve, for some people's physiology, some releasing of, first of all, pliability, more pliability in the cell walls, and then some releasing of impurities that are sitting at atomic, molecular, and subcellular levels of the physiology. These are the levels where I'm seeing a big releasing of discordant feelings, and also karma is involved, ancestral karma is involved, also societal karma is involved, earth karma is involved. So these clearings are affecting those people. So what that means is, as your physiology starts to utilize the potential of having a little bit more balanced elements, and the cells start running cleaner, This is what's happening. The cells are going to start running cleaner. That means they're also going to function more intelligently. This will make you more sensitive. And we know that being overly sensitive is a problem. That's why the work with the cerebellum and the filtering system happened before this part of the healing. And I didn't know that when we were doing it, but now it becomes clear to me that that's what we're doing. So thank you, you guys, for being the ones helping to make that happen. And I feel like I'm just on the I'm in the zone, and I'm just along for the ride here. Anyway, that purification and upgrading of cellular intelligence, and along with that, the causal body medicine, the causal and collective level influence on the cells makes them not just more intelligent, but also more at peace. More peaceful, more happy, more secure, feeling safe. Did you know sometimes your cells don't feel safe? It happens. It happens sometimes. It's not something we notice that often, but it can happen. But they feel more safe. And with the greater intelligence, they're able to self-structure in a way that will keep them more safe. I'm seeing a big shifting in the field of the collective at this last moments, these last minutes of our webinar. And I'm offering this big shifting that's in the collective field of humanity. And this is the gift that our webinar is giving to humanity as a sort of byproduct of the gift that we've created within ourselves, the transformations and the healings within ourselves. We're now giving this gift to everyone else. Oh, beautiful woman. This another brilliant, I'm telling you, this group, we have some really incredible souls here. Last minute question here. More pliability in the cells allows ebb and flow of nutrients, yes, into the cells, and toxins out of the cells, yes, exactly. We need to be able to release toxins at a rate which we can physically handle, not too fast. Wi-Fi may be a cause for lack of cellular pliability. Oh, that's interesting. And permeability. Oh, that's so interesting. I try to guard against Wi-Fi, eat pure food, much more love. Much more with love. Yes. And it's true that there are things we can do on the surface, of course. That's our conscience, using the conscience, because the conscience knows what we should be doing at any given point to make the best choices and decisions and take the best actions in order to support. The thing about doing the energy work to increase the cellular pliability, thank you for that word, I really appreciate it, and also your recap of what the work that we're doing, is that the karmic shift that's taking place in the collective consciousness is also reflecting back into our physiologies, because we're the ones that are responsible for this process that's taking place. We're sitting here together, we're putting our attention on it. This is being in the zone through our physiologies, making this happen. It's also giving rise to stability in the system. The reason that rapid release of toxins in the physiology can sometimes give rise to discord or some kind of symptoms or something is when there isn't enough stability in the physiology. So the stability is also increasing at the same time. Then we can release faster and more easily. Once the whole system is running clean, then we're still strong. And this brings me to this my interesting adult children they say things sometimes, and I'm like, ooh. And one of the things they were saying to me the other day, my sons were saying, times of peace breed weak men. They say, I'm like, oh, how about them apples? So times of peace breed weak men. Well, what it does is, in a balanced, wholesome way that's through self-referral loops of consciousness. So that means consciousness is ever monitoring its own activity. So if it becomes too much, then we pull back. If it needs a little bit more, we bring more. If more strength is needed at a cellular level in order to sustain the flow, the ebb and flow of nutrients in and toxins out, then so be it. And then what happens is a state of peace is attained by the physiology. When the person's in the zone, When a person's in the zone, there is an overriding feeling of all is well. I am held in the embrace of Mother. But at the same time, one can also be aware that one is doing something kind of intense, right? So it's not peace in the way my sons refer to it as the times that breed weak men, where you sit around and don't do anything useful all day long, but rather it's a time of peace, like that feeling of being embraced in the love of Mother, and at the same time being able to engage dynamically in the field of activity. Oh, you guys. Okay, so we've gone past our minutes here just by a few. This has been really luscious. In my mind, it's been really luscious, really beautiful, really an incredible session. And I thank everybody for that. I feel as if we still have, there's a lot more that we could do. How about that? We can have some more flowers. We can have some different flowers for a minute. That there's a lot more potential that we can explore with this. I see more questions coming in. So she's not sure the exact quote. This is the lady about cellular pliability. But her, Maharishi said that the duty of the military in times of peace is to maintain public parks and areas of recreation for others. I think this would take lots of strength. Oh, it would. And here's another anonymous peace allows creativity. Yes, anonymous viewer. Peace allows creativity to thrive. Otherwise, men are fighting all the time. That is absolutely correct. And this is all about these quotes by Maharishi. We're all about how to really restructure or redefine our relationship with the creative process, because ultimately creativity is behind the creation of wealth, right? The person who figures out how to provide a better service, and go to yesterday's webinar when you get the recording for some pretty amazing stories in that area. But when people can utilize their creativity, we can create a world. If every one of us was able to have a clear flow of conscience and follow conscience clearly, in 5 to 10 years, we would literally be living in a utopia. If everybody on earth could do this thing, in 5 years, we would literally be living in a utopia. 5, I bet, maybe even less. So it is possible. It is possible, and I'm sure that there's a lot more energy work we can do in that area too. So thank you, everyone, for being with me. Okay, wait a minute. Oh, I missed some of the chat. Sorry, I had double windows here. Oh, look at you guys. The chat box has been busy. I love that. Times of war breed men who are dead. Oh, God. Yeah, isn't that true? Missing limbs, have PTSD, depressed. Yes. Thank you. I'm going to give that to my sons. And for me, the only one about Morganite. Okay. Wow. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with me today. And I'm really excited about our upcoming webinars, because I can see in today's webinar, we touched on a lot of topics that have tremendous potential to expand into some great stuff.